I also want to talk about the events of the moon landing in Woodstock because there's the shrooms. Speaking of Woodstock, you got the shrooms following you. It's gonna kill you because someone, the Washington Post, someone at the Washington Post posted an op-ed the other day. Now, the op-ed wasn't actually all that bad, but the tweet that accompanied the op-ed said something about, it sounded very social justice, had a social justice tone to it, by saying that the NASA that sent a man to the moon, it was mostly white and male. It wasn't that family friendly. It was fun, but I guess the big, oh my goodness, the big takeaway was that it was just a bunch of white males. Now, in all fairness, if you actually read the piece, it doesn't really have that much of a social justice tone to it. It does call the NASA team a bunch of badasses in the opening paragraph. But what I found was interesting was that the end of the piece mentioned that yeah, and then the astronauts came back, and then we had Woodstock, which was this Woodstock, this wonderful event where everyone came together for a free concert, the best musicians in the world. And it was all about peace and love and harmony and coming together. And I thought that was interesting because right around the time when it happened, when both events happened, Ayn Rand wrote an essay titled Apollo versus Dionysus, where she compares the two events of the moon landing and Woodstock and notes how the two events they exemplify a contrast of values in America. And she starts off by talking about the moon landing and how much of a monumental achievement the moon landing was. I mean, think about it. The moon landing, sending men to the moon takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of dedication to reason and science. And especially in the context of the Cold War, it showed that America was truly the greatest country, and it was a place where men were dedicated to the mind and achievement, not to, the workers' revolution, not to class warfare, which is what the Soviet Union was predicated on. Class warfare. And she talks about how after the moon landing, there was a lot of celebration in the streets. I think it was in New York, where she went to a parade and she said, it was all about brotherly love and coming to celebrate this monumental achievement, and everyone was happy and excited. Great event. However, even at the time, even during the 1960s, the American media had mixed feelings on the moon landing. A lot of people in the media. She pointed out, it seems as almost if a lot of people in the American media didn't even want America to be successful in the moon landing. There was a lot of this feeling like, why are we wasting time and money going to the moon when we have so many problems in America? When children are going to bed hungry, and we need to really focus on taking care of each other here on Earth in America. Why are we wasting all this money to go to the moon? And not surprisingly enough, you still see this attitude today amongst lefties, especially, who are very cynical and pessimistic about Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk spending billions of dollars exploring space. Anyway, she notes how, the attitude at the time, there were some people in the American media that celebrated it, but there were other people in the media who kind of viewed it as, this is nice, but at the end of the day, men still put on their pants one leg at a time, and we're all the same. And she even mentions, she even shows, I can't remember if it was an op-ed or a news broadcast, but they said, a potential downside of the moon landing is that it will remind some people that they haven't done anything with their lives, that their lives are insignificant because, the moon landing, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication to reason. And so it might remind people that they haven't done much with their life. They don't dedicate their minds to thinking and accomplishing things. Hammer time. Oh my, I didn't know he was gonna go invisible on me like that. And then she contrasts this whole phenomenon with the moon landing, or with Woodstock. Now, Woodstock got, for the most part, got a lot of positive coverage. It was all, what a great event. All these people coming together. It's all about peace and love and harmony and enjoying music. Especially during that time, the 1960s, there was a lot of racial tension, and you had the Vietnam War, and had this culture war. You had the counterculture, but the Woodstock, it was just people coming together and having a good time and celebrating peace and love, man. And, you saw it in the piece, in the Washington Post piece I mentioned. Like, yeah, these people came back to the moon, and then we had Woodstock. What a great event. Heck, myself growing up, I was born in 1986, about 2 decades after the moon landing in Woodstock. Growing up in the 90s and 2000s on MTV and VH1. Woodstock is very glorified. What an amazing event that Woodstock was. What a great event. Woodstock. I mean, so much so that they brought Woodstock back for the 25th anniversary in 1994. So as Ayn Rand points out, like, Woodstock, though, wasn't that great of an event. First off, she really goes into, she really takes the hippie culture to task, saying that it's mainly a movement, the hippie movement, of mindless people who refuse to think. Forget about, like, just not using your mind, but just refusing to use your mind. And conformity in the name of anti-conformity. And she talks about how the people that try to organize Woodstock for a profit, the people that organized Woodstock were these rich lefties, these young rich lefties, who were trying to cash in on this hippie movement, and they ended up getting screwed. The people that organized the event, because they couldn't really hire the security and infrastructure possible to really keep people out and to manage the event, so they just ended up putting it on for free and eating the losses. And she said, both sides are getting their comeuppance. First off, the hippies are this demographic that deserve to be cashed in on, because I'll get to that in a second. But the people organizing the event, it's like, yeah, that's what you get for trying to embrace this demographic. You deserve to lose money like this. She talks about the event, and she cites this New York Times article where they interviewed a few people who went to the event and talked about how they didn't really plan much for the event. They didn't really make much travel accommodations. They just loaded up a van. And they didn't really bring much food with them. And they ended up getting lost and separated from each other. But yeah, they didn't bring much food. And one of the accounts was, I was just sitting there, enjoying the concert by myself. And a box of Cocoa Puffs hit me in the shoulder, and someone said, grab a handful and pass it on. And then later in the day, a watermelon rolled by with a few bites taken out of it, and someone said, take a bite and give the watermelon to someone else. and all the sharing of drugs and whatnot. And it's like, what does this say about these people? They're, oh, here's food. You put food in someone's hand, they'll just eat it. You put a joint in their hands and they'll smoke it. No thought goes into this whatsoever. No planning. A lot of people got sick at Woodstock because it was raining during one of the days. It was raining and a lot of people got sick, which created this health crisis where a lot of doctors had to be flown in from New York City and other areas to treat these people. Treat a bunch of people who probably hate them, probably view these doctors as squares and as the man. She said, yeah, well, like, left to their own devices, these people don't even know well enough to come in from the rain. And these people were stealing food from local farmers. They were, parking their cars on farmland and on people's land, having sex on people's lands, people's backyards. This is what brotherly love looks like. And another one of the people that was interviewed in the New York Times piece that Ayn Rand cites just says, yeah, for a moment we felt part of something, felt part of a movement, felt together. That's why it was great. For once, we felt like we had power. We were part of something. So yeah, this is brotherly love, essentially. Violating other people's property rights. Not really concerning yourselves with others, inconveniencing entire towns, and having doctors come in because you couldn't come in from the rain. Dressing like a bunch of tacky hooligans. Yeah. Conformity in the name of anti-conformity. These people, the hippies of the '60s, they dressed tacky. They didn't really care for hygiene, and they were just trying to stick it to the man. So being anti-conform, so they were being conformists in the name of anti-conformity, which was another big irony. And yeah, disease and drug use and just the flat-out refusal to use your mind and just looking, these people, again, they're anti-conformists, but they're the first people to really embrace a group. Like, oh, look, other people like me, other people who dress like me, dress all tacky, do a bunch of drugs, and just hang out at this free concert that's only provided because someone decided to take a loss of millions of dollars. Yeah, not conformist at all. Anyway. The whole point she was making is this was a huge contrast of values. When man refuses to use his mind, he's going to be stuck in the mud and be prone to diseases and whatnot and anarchy. But when man uses his mind, he can go all the way to the stars. He can go to the moon and back. Again, that essay is called Apollo versus Dionysus. I highly recommend checking it out. It is a very, very interesting essay.